Hey everyone, today I'm going to be going over the 8.8 bonus update notes. This update is going live on September 7th. It's pretty short, so this video should be also very short. But regardless, there are changes that are happening, so I think it's important to go over them kind of a little bit in detail, just in case those changes do affect the gods that you play. Before we get into the content, I wanted to say thanks for everyone who watches. I wanted to give away 5 awesome skins once I hit 100 YouTube subs, and I also want to give away 2 awesome skins once I hit 50 Twitch follows. So if you enjoy the content, subscribe or follow and you'll have a nice little chance to win a skin. Alright, let's get into it. The first item that's getting a little bit of a nerf is Fighter's Mask. This is the tier 2 version of Rangda's Mask. A lot of people start this to be more aggressive. The physical power is getting decreased from 35 to 30, and the magical power is getting decreased from 65 to 60. So a little bit of a nerf there, but realistically, it's still a cheap item. It's still giving you a decent amount of power spike early. So I think if you're trying to play in that play style, it can still be an item that you pick up without really feeling too bad about these nerfs. Sundering Axe getting a little bit of a nerf as well, at least the upgrade, decreasing the base bonus damage from the item's passive from 5% of 3% to the target's current health. The protections is not going to be changed on that, so it's still going to help you be a little bit tankier. It's just that the damage on top of it isn't going to be quite as much as before. Similar to Fighter's Mask, I think this is still going to be a good item that is worth building in Joust specifically. You may not do as much damage, but it's going to let you stay alive a little bit longer, stay in those fights a little bit longer if you need to. And with the double tank meta still kind of being a thing, this item is still going to be worth a buy. Soul Gem also getting a little bit of a nerf, changing the 40% heal to a 30% heal. This will hurt it a little bit on non-lifesteal mages. I think this was kind of a core build for most mages just because it had so much built into it. But even though it does have a little bit of a nerf on the heal itself, it still has 80 magical power, 150 health, 12% lifesteal, and cooldown reduction. So while it's a little bit less potent as an overall item for everyone, it's still going to be pretty core on those lifesteal mages. Iqbal getting a nerf, decreasing the power increase from the passive from 15 to 10 per stack. So when you land those autos, you're getting those power stacks. Instead of 15, it's only going to be 10, which makes it be a total of 30 instead of 45 when you hit 3 of those stacks. So I think this was a good item in Conquest. I think it was an okay item in Joust, but to me, I don't think that auto attack based hunters are really what you want to be picking in Joust anyways. So if you want to box early, I think it can still be good, but in a lot of other ways, I think hunter-based or ability-based hunters are just better in almost every way, and those ability-based hunters don't necessarily want Iqbal. Odysseus Bow, this is actually a pretty big change, I think, decreasing the attack speed from 40% to 30%. The passive is still really what's valuable on Odie Bow, and it's still pretty cheap, but 10% attack speed is going to be impactful. You're probably going to notice that. And if you're going an all bow build, maybe it doesn't matter as much, but this item isn't going to be as valuable to just throw in somewhere in your build because you're not going to get 40% attack speed just right off the jump. I still think in Joust, again, because of the passive, it's still going to be okay, but before where it was a must buy, you may have to think of a way to kind of replace that spread out damage that Odie Bow was giving you from before. Void Shield, decreasing physical protections from 60 to 45. This is going to hurt warriors more than anything else because they loved building this and getting some of those protections. It's also a very good offensive item. So this is an item that you may want to think twice about building on warriors. If you're building other defensive items, I still think this item can be good and you want the offensive utility of it. But it can't necessarily be one of the only defensive items you have because it really doesn't do that much anymore when decreasing the physical protections from 60 down to 45. Stone Cutting Sword, similar to Void Shield, it's keeping all of its offensive utility but decreasing just the physical protection buff from the item's passive to 7 to 5 per stack. So you can see there, instead of 21 protections, you're only getting 15 when it's fully stacked. but the physical protection shred debuff is not changing. So if you're hitting those autos, you're going to be doing more damage. It's just that you're also going to be taking a little bit more damage than you were before. Again, this hurts both assassins and warriors specifically. I don't think assassins are that good in Joust, just overall as a class. I still think there can be assassins that are effective, like Fenrir or Naja, or any of the assassins that can build a little bit more tanky and be effective. But with Stone Cutting Sword, that's not really what you want. You want that auto attack based assassin that's going to just burst you down and shred you very quickly. And I think in most cases, since the other team is a team of 3, you're going to get CC'd before you can get full value from this item. So it's not that it's a bad item necessarily. I think it's just only a good item on classes that are fairly weak in Joust. Winged Blade, decreasing the health from 250 to 200. A little bit of a nerf, but honestly not really enough of a nerf to do anything in terms of changing when you would buy it. The passive is still really nice for any gods that you're playing against that have slows, and 50 health really doesn't matter either way. If you're building this item before, you're going to keep building this item in this next patch. Charybdis getting a little bit of some bug fixes. It looks like where an issue, she wasn't getting the movement speed from the tiered up ability in her Whirlpool. This doesn't matter too much as far as like ranked Joust goes, because she's still not going to be available in ranked Joust until the next update, I believe. So it doesn't matter that much, but if you're playing her and you're noticing that she's a little bit buggy, those fixes are coming through. Probably the biggest change, or the most changes that are happening in this patch, are to Gilgamesh. So Winds of Shamash decreasing that wind wall slow from 50 scaling to 70 to only being 50 at all ranks. So the late game slow isn't going to be as effective, but if we're going to be honest, 50% slow is still good. You're still going to do what you need to do with that 50% slow in most cases. An increase of cooldown from 90 to 110 seconds is pretty significant though. 20 extra seconds having that Winds of Shamash, having to wait for that to be up, is going to hurt his viability a little bit. Dropkick, decreasing the initial hit of the physical power scaling from 50 to 40%. Also decreasing the burst physical power scaling from 55 to 45%. So the burst ability from the dropkick is nerfed a little bit. And then Hero's Advance, decreasing that vision range that allies become buffed in, where they get that extra speed from 150 to 110. 3 nerfs, that are happening to his abilities. I want to say this is going to hurt Gilgamesh's viability in Joust, but I also think that just his kit in general is good enough that these nerfs still don't really affect him that much. I don't know if you're going to want to pick him as a single support type role, but if he's the second person and is a second tank bruiser style on your team, he just has so much utility. You can use him in so many different ways. You can build him in so many different ways that I think he's still going to be a very strong god. We've been banning him. Maybe after this we won't ban him anymore in our ranked Joust games, but we'll just have to see. I still don't think these nerfs are going to take him out of the meta in any sense. Morgan Le Fay also getting a nice little round of nerfs. Sigil Mastery, that is her first ability where she has to choose between the slow, the fear, and the clone. Increasing that cooldown for all of those by 1 second. Increasing the HP the clone has from 10% of Morgan's life to 30%. And increasing the power the clone has from 50 of Morgan's to 75%. So the clone, probably the least used ability out of those 3 variations. They're just trying to buff it up a little bit and make that a little bit more useful and have people use that more often. But even though that's a buff, there's still a nerf to the cooldown on it, which if you've ever played against Morgan, especially in Joust, that fear is very, very potent if it's up every 12 seconds. If you face a good Morgan, it's really hard to do anything. So I think that's a necessary nerf for her. I still don't think the clone has that much use compared to a slow or a fear specifically. So I don't really know if that's going to affect how people play her. but in certain cases, maybe it'll help. So we'll see about that. Shroud of Wildfire, increasing the cooldown from 13 to 14 seconds. So she's going to have that up 1 second less often. And then the ultimate, decreasing the health heal per hit, scaling from 6 to 14. Now it's only going to scale from 6 to 10%. That's pretty necessary, I think. It was insane how much she could heal late game if she hits all of her ultimates line abilities in a row. I mean, if you just do the math, at 14% of her health heal, that's 14, 28, almost more than 50% of her health that she could heal back up. So she's really good in Joust still. These nerfs, similar to Gilgamesh, I don't think are going to take her out of the meta at all. You're still going to see a ton of her, so just be a little bit more aware that if you're picking her, you're not going to have quite the time between abilities that you did before. Osiris also getting a couple nerfs, increasing the cooldown on his Sickle Strike from 5 seconds to 6 seconds, and increasing the cooldown on his Spirit Flail from 10 seconds to 11 seconds. So Osiris really does have short cooldowns already, so I think this will put him in a little bit of a fair place. But I don't think you necessarily want to be picking auto attack warriors in Joust anyways. He can be a really good counter to healing if you have somebody that can hit his ultimate fairly consistently, and then also with the tethers, he can take a ton of damage. So I do think he's one of the better auto attack warriors in Joust, but I just still think there's better. He's fairly middle of the pack as a warrior anyways. I don't think this will change. These changes won't affect that too much. Persephone is getting a little bit of a nerf to her harvest ability. That is the flowers that she spawns. She can heal off them, or she can use them to attack. Decreasing the movement speed of the flowers by 10%, so they're not going to be able to chase down people as easily. And then decreasing the flower bite damage from 40 scaling to 20 to 40 scaling to 180. I think that makes sense just because late game, again, if you're hit by all 3 of the flowers that she puts down right away, that's just a ton of burst damage that is pretty easy to hit for somebody, especially if they're diving you, and kind of led to Persephone being a really, really hard god to kill, especially in Joust with the small lane. She can hit those flowers very, very easily. We tend to ban her in our games. I don't know if you necessarily need to anymore, especially with some of the new maps. She can actually shoot her ultimate off of the map, so it's not as potent in the early game. But I think she's still a strong god. I don't know if you have to ban her anymore, but she's just going to do a little bit less damage with her harvest, which is kind of what her kit revolves around now. Yamoja getting a couple nerfs. If you know me, I think very highly of Yamoja in Joust. They're removing 10% bonus healing from the buff that she can apply from her basic attacks. One thing to note here is they're not removing the healing from those basic attacks, so you're still going to get that. You're just not going to have that 10% bonus healing buff when she hits a teammate with basic attacks, so they're not going to be healing 10% more. You're still going to get those initial heals from the basic attacks themselves, so very important to remember. I think the heals are more important than the buff itself sometimes. River's Rebuke, increasing the cooldown from 120 to 140. This is a pretty massive nerf. 20 extra seconds on, one of the best ultimates in Joust, I think, is significant. Her kit is still so good that I don't think it really hurts her that much, but an extra 20 seconds to do that ultimate is going to feel like a very, very long time in Joust. You should probably be getting a little bit more cooldown in your build if you weren't already. And then the last nerf is Ymir, decreasing the damage reduction debuff Ymir applies to enemies from 15% to 10%, and that's just on his passive. So all of his abilities apply this frostbite to enemies, so now they're just going to be having less of a damage reduction debuff, which means they're going to be doing more damage even if they're under that frostbite passive. So that is it. That is all the changes that we have for the 8.8 bonus update. Again, this goes live September 7th. If you learn something, if you can take something away from this video and it helps you become a better Smite player or Joust player, please like, please subscribe or check me out on Twitch as well. I'm always happy to hang out and answer questions or just BS about Joust and Smite in general. So thank you guys for watching.